Alrighty, it's 4 o'clock. I'm gonna give it 2 more minutes before we start. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. So this is the second Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood Task Force meeting. Real quick, let's go through roll call. I'm just gonna go in the order that I had you guys listed on the minutes from last meeting. Since this is our second meeting, if you guys can just list your title as well on the task force, so we can start learning everyone's names and titles. Chris Meyer. I see your bubble. We're gonna come back to you. Kathy Johnson. Kathy Johnson Harris. I think you were frozen, Kathy. Oh, you're muted.
You were frozen.
Oh, I was frozen?
Yeah, you just stopped. Kathy Johnson Harris, property owner.
Cool. Hopefully I don't freeze up again.
Okay.
Chris Meyer.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Chris Meyer, I think I'm the business representative, one of the business representatives from the Local Energy Alliance program, LEAP. Thanks.
Katie Holland Rupnick. Okay. Kim Leo Spalding. You're on mute, Kim.
There we go. Property owner on Ridge Street.
Pat Lloyd.
Property owner, Raymond Road.
Audrey Oliver.
Audrey Oliver, resident South First Street.
Hey, Audrey.
Hi.
Tania Dowell.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tania Dow, and I'm on the Planning Commission.
Cool, full house. Except for Katie, but that's okay. So quick recap from last meeting. We talked about the basics of CDBG. CDBG, the funding, well, first off, CDBG, the full name is Community Development Block Grant. It's funding we get every year from HUD. The funds aim to help low to moderate income people, and they also aim to eliminate or prevent slum and blight conditions in any target neighborhood. The Ridge Street priority neighborhood is broken by census tract. So it's not just the Ridge Street itself. And we'll look at the map in a second again. And then the Ridge Street Task Force aims to identify priorities and create a project list that the CDBG grant funding will hopefully address, and will create a project that council will ultimately approve. This project has to be something that everyone in the Ridge Street priority neighborhood can benefit from. And examples of these projects in the past included parks, sidewalks, and pedestrian safety improvements. There was a more comprehensive list on the last meeting, which was recorded and is on the city's website. So last meeting, we also had our homework assignments. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. Were you guys able to look through the link that I sent you?
Yes.
Some of the survey. Okay. No. Okay. That's okay. We're going to.
Couldn't figure
Go.
out how to get it open.
Okay. That's fine. We're going to go through it now. Oh, Joe, can I share my screen?
Sorry about that, Aaron. Sure. Go ahead.
So on the link, Kim, I'll work with you after this meeting to get that link working for you.
Thanks.
But we have the Ridge Street priority neighborhood map, and I did get this zoomed up for you guys. I know that was last time. So on the first tab, we have this bigger map. Second tab, we have all our agendas, and if we scroll down, we have our minutes. And then our survey results on the third tab. But real quick, before I even go to the survey results, were there any changes or additions to the minutes? Did you guys have a chance to look at that?
Looks good.
Everyone else?
I move that the minutes be accepted as written.
That works with me.
Second.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so the survey responses. Pat, you mailed me some and I just got them today. So I'm going to add these into, I'm going to add these into the site. But in the meantime, we could still go through them. Next month, we're going to still continue to build our project list. So if you guys run into any of your neighbors in the meantime, continue to ask them about our project and what we're trying to do with this money, and we can continue to make this list bigger. So what I'm going to do is actually share the Word version so I can type. There we go. Okay, so what we need to do is start to fine tooth comb and create a final project list. The numbers next to each bullet represent how many people wrote down the same answer. So we want to keep that in mind as we're coming up with a final project list. If someone said, you know, what was it, one of the top ranking ones? Easy access to downtown. We want to, our final project should be something that relates to that strength. And should also be something that addresses some of the top weaknesses. So we'll go through this. Anything jump out in the strength section to you guys?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you want us to ask questions or just to look at what's listed? Because a couple of things I didn't understand on the list.
So you can, if you have a question, you can ask. Let me try to answer that first.
Okay. On the one under housing, it says HOA, Resident Association, Resident-Led Redevelopment. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I know what the resident redevelopment means because of what has been done with the charrettes down at South First Street, which was really good. But I don't understand the other part, HOA and Resident Association.
So in this survey response, they were listing HOAs, resident associations, the community housing involvement as a strength. And they listed these examples. So that's why I had it grouped under housing. Does that make sense?
And HOA stands
The
for
HOA, I don't understand.
Homeowners Association.
I know
So,
that.
as an example, all of Brookwood is under a homeowners association, which means we pay dues. And for those dues, we get some so-called amenities like our lawns mowed.
Ma'am, I understand that. I was just wondering how it was a strength. But
I don't,
we'll move on and it'll probably come up and I'll understand later. Okay.
Yeah, maybe the person who wrote that might explain why they put it.
Cam, it may have been on one of the surveys that went in from someone who is a member of the Brookwood Homeowners Association. And I'm not sure if Burnett is also a homeowners association.
It is.
Yeah, so my guess is people see the strength of that as there's a board of directors that responds to any concerns that the folks in the neighborhood might have. And I'm just guessing.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have a question then. These things that are listed here are the answers that we who were asked to do our homework put in, correct?
It's both the task force and everyone else in the community who the task force reached out to.
Okay.
Submitted back.
Okay.
So Aaron, again, you didn't do any sorting here. Again, these are just survey responses that you cut and paste into and then aggregate correctly. Okay. There was no value judgment being done by you.
Nope.
Say, to me, that what sticks out real quick is the sense of community, where it's got a fair amount of responses, and especially the friendly neighbors and diversity of races and ages. You know, I think obviously, and the access to downtowns, you know, wouldn't disagree with those, obviously, and of course seems to be very popular.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the weaknesses section. Oh, hang on, we have a hand raised here. Let me go back. Megan Donovan, you're live with the task force. You'll
Thank
have
you.
to unmute yourself.
Okay. I'm sorry if I missed this. How many surveys did you get so far?
This this document has 14 responses.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to go to the weaknesses. Okay, so I'll have to scroll down eventually, but here are the weaknesses. Anything jump out from here?
Can you scroll it up a tiny bit after traffic speeding.
Traffic speeding.
I can't see what's below traffic speeding. There we go. Thank you. Well, I think traffic speeding jumps out just because of the numbers.
Yep.
Okay.
Ridge Street traffic speeding isn't listed there. Oh, yes, it is.
And Aaron, just to add to that, I have a compilation of the ones that I mail to you from my neighborhood, and traffic speeding, use of cut-throughs is a big one, as well as city lack of funding for infrastructure, sidewalks, bus stops, which is echoed in a lot of what you've written already.
Mm-hmm.
Abandoned homes.
Aaron, yeah, just looking at this section and the next section, which is concerns, obviously traffic, parking seems to be big ones, and kind of associated infrastructure associated with that. So sidewalks. I can definitely say it seems like a lot of people park here. You know, the strength of the neighborhood is that it is close to the city, and you could say UVA, and it seems to attract a lot of people who like to park their cars during the week, in the day, and then, you know, go to work and then come back and leave. You know, it's a challenge on our side of Ridge Street.
Okay. Anything jump out? So I'm going to jump to the concerns then. Anything stand out that's different than what we've already talked about from the list above?
Aaron?
Yes.
This is Tania. Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Has this document been shared with the group?
It has, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll scroll down a little bit.
Just say that there is an interesting, there was weaknesses, concerns kind of around unoccupied and dilapidated housing. But then it's, you might say, contradicted by concerns around gentrification. Mm-hmm. On the concern side. Something to, I think, needs to be considered as we move forward.
I might add, it indicated about the 3 accidents on past accidents this summer. We also can add to that, a child was struck crossing from the Old Ridge going towards Townsville Park.
Mm.
And she did survive, but she was badly hurt. So that was one that I thought I had added, but maybe I didn't.
For this bullet? But by the Ridge Street and Fifth Street corridor?
Yeah, where they, the 3 accidents this past summer.
Okay.
There has been 2 people prior to this summer that were killed on the Fifth Street corridor. And I actually can attest to, my car was totaled there also, but that's been about 8 years ago. So it's really dangerous.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that entrance from Brookwood onto Fifth. That's terrifying every time I do it.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Okay, then
Erin,
why, go ahead.
what you just received in the mail from me, I just want to throw this out there. There were concerns about increasing tax rate for older longtime residents and street lighting in general as list of concerns and issues.
I'm gonna go down to the last, I think, 2 sections, right? Yeah, last 2 sections, and then we could start talking about potential project ideas. So possible solutions. This is what people had listed.
Yeah, I see the sidewalk thing, and the one I'm really aware of, again, is on Brookwood. It's like no sidewalk on either side as you come up towards Ridge Street. So everybody has to walk in the street.
I know I'd be curious to know how this group could help the prevention of gentrification in the neighborhood. I think that is very important, but I'm not exactly for sure how this group is going to be able to tackle that. And when I say that, I also saw that someone mentioned about people who've been in the neighborhood and have older homes having a higher tax rate or increased taxes. And so to me, that is what is possibly causing or the catalyst for the gentrification in the neighborhood. Because if someone goes to the bank and gets a loan based off of what they can afford and they're approved, but we have all of this new development coming in the neighborhood, which is causing the property value to go up, which is a good thing, but it is also causing you to be in a tax bracket that if you had to go to the bank and reapply that you could not afford, what are you supposed to do if you can't keep up? So I think we need to be very mindful with the new development, not only in this neighborhood, but just in the city in general, of how new development affects residents that have already established the neighborhood.
I'm looking at this traffic and parking, and again, Brookwood is an obstacle course.
Well, I was looking at that too, and I think just traffic in general, especially when you're coming off of Ridge Street, trying to access Fifth Street. If you try coming through there early morning or during the 5 o'clock rush hour, you're playing Russian roulette almost. People
Definitely.
block that block. They do not stop.
It's a horrible, horrible intersection.
It is. It gets very congested very easily.
Not only the intersections and Brookwood, Old Ridge and Raymond Road, nobody knows who, well, I shouldn't say no one, nobody abides by the right of way. So cars are trying to go even though they should stop. And that is a problem. But one thing about what Tania said about gentrification, another thing that needs to be looked at, if you go back and look at the data on Ridge Street, a lot of the places have the lowest amount of rent that is charged to residents, which indicates that there are a lot of people who are making less than $10,000 a year, 30% below the poverty line. And the concern that I have is education, affordability, conversations with these individuals, because if you look at the census data, it shows that a large percentage of these people are what we call front line workers. They're CNAs, they're the construction workers, they're people who keep this town going. And some of them own homes and a lot of them are renters, but it appears that we have from 200,000 is what I think I remembered, to 10,000 or below $10,000. We need to be looking at programs that would afford them something to do better. I.e., we have new hotels all up and down our corridor. How many people have been approached to work or to become part of the establishment, to be a manager or someone working in the hotel other than the maid? And it's nothing wrong with that, but the fact that these people are moving into our neighborhoods with job possibilities, are they approaching anyone in the community to work for them?
Well, and I remember that was one of the selling points of the hotel that went on the corner of Cherry and Ridge, that it would employ local people. And I think that has not occurred.
I would also be interested, Miss Johnson Harris, I believe. I love the idea of community resources. Education is vital in order for advancement. So I don't know what type of like connection we could have maybe with the hotel, since it is in this community, of maybe using their conference room once coronavirus is over to host some of these educational events or workshops, or partnering with Consular Park. I know they have the rec center there. But I do think we could definitely use the more resources that we have in this area.
Another a plug-in for my church, Mount Zion First African Baptist Church. We also use theirs. But one thing that concerns me, and that idea is excellent, but we have a KTech. I was on the board a few months ago, but my term ran out. We could use some of this money to provide scholarships for individuals. We talk about childcare, the possibility of offering educational opportunities to, if you know construction work, how come maybe you might be trained to do electrical work or plumbing, or if you work at a service station, you could learn to repair the cars, but people don't tend to apply because they feel that they don't have money. So an apprenticeship program would be good also.
Would there be any way to piggyback with the city's training, like the Go Driver, the training of bus drivers?
Well, the city does have, so remember when we went over the different categories of CDBG? So there's the CDBG priority neighborhood category, which is what we're focusing on right now. And then there's also the CDBG public services, econ, and housing categories. So application for those just went out. The request for proposals was from October 1st to October 16th. And during that time, all organizations that are eligible wrote in applications for programs like Ms. Johnson Harris just mentioned, education scholarships, housing related programs, public service projects. So the CDBG task force is in the process of reviewing those applications right now for awarding.
So we should not consider those kinds of things then, because it's already the purview of someone else, some other group.
It depends. I mean, if this is something that the entire Ridge Street community could benefit from, possibly. But there is a separate section of CDBG that does provide for an opportunity for that kind of program to get funding.
Okay.
But this is just Chris from Labor. We just submitted to that grant proposal, included something very similar, Kathy, to what you suggested. And we're closely with Office of Economic Development. We're just hiring our second person from the Home to Hope program. We'll be living in our basement apartment for a couple months. So if you know people who are interested in that type of work, we're going to be continuing to staff up, doing our weatherization work, technical work, and ideally have those people work on homes in this neighborhood too. So again, we have programs to do all that. Also, I see people requesting that. We have lots of money from utility and or the city to do work, again, mostly around energy efficiency, insulation, stuff like that. But that type of thing, I would say at the moment, to a certain extent, LEAP does have resources to do those things. Not for dozens of people, but for, again, handful of people to a certain extent. I know that you're thinking probably bigger than that, but.
Every little bit helps.
I want to go on to the last section here so that we can start working on our priority list, our project list, sorry.
Let's just say, I did walk the street the other day, and I've been talking to Mr. Eugene Williams, who's our neighbor a little bit. Of course, he did a lot of dogwood housing, I think you know about, and getting to the points around gentrification, affordable housing for working people in the community, helping them maybe transition out of the public housing, something like that. I would like the group potentially to consider, how would we potentially look with a partner like Habitat or Piedmont, or to revitalize some of those houses and put residents from this area who are maybe renting currently, into those houses and keep them in the neighborhood, but make them homeowners, in a subsidized way, and take some of those properties like this next to Leap's office right now that is boarded up and I don't think has been lived in for multiple years, and put those to use. So I don't think that would require all of the money, but definitely there's traffic and parking, concerns I think that should be addressed also with some of this, but a certain amount of those resources I think could go a long way into getting at a couple different things, with one project, you might say, of the concerns. My apologies, I have to go. I know it's supposed to be an hour-long meeting, but wanted to put that out there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
I know several, actually more than several, many years ago, and Kim, jump in here if you remember, the Rich Street Neighborhood Association got very, very involved in trying to get those what seemed to be abandoned houses on Old Ridge, close to Mr. Williams' house and the Leap house. And we just did not get very far. I think one of the things that was said was that the owners could not be found. These are houses that had been in families for a while, and then kind of, I guess the city lost track of who actually owned them. So there they still sit. And this is a good 8 to 10 years after we worked really hard to try to have something done with those houses. The other thing I wanted to put out there is when the Leap house was converted from basically an abandoned house, it was my understanding when Dee Dee Smith and Dave Norris were on the city council that after a year, that house was supposed to revert back to being a rental for low income families. And I don't think that happened.
Yeah, I just, Pat, I supplied Aaron with some addresses, not of the one next to Leap, because I guess that's 600 something. But the other two, and then there's one on the corner of, not on the corner, one more on Ridge Street, just past Grand Road, that I think is now empty. And, and that's got multiple lots too. So we have possibilities of housing that could be repurposed. I definitely don't like knocking down houses and putting up something new. The character of the neighborhood, I think, warrants us to use the house that already exists.
I have a question. You mentioned a house up by Mr. Eugene Williams and the one down. People have to pay taxes on property, so the
Yes.
city should have some information. And apparently the people are maintaining their taxes. So to say nobody can be found doesn't sound exactly right.
Well, we thought, Miss Harris, that we were getting the runaround, but you know,
and
we came up against City Hall and didn't quite know what to do.
well, one thing I might add is that a couple of those properties that may be vacant, but not run down, there are families that have been in this community since the 1800s that own that we're talking about trying to put a house or whatever, and they own it, and apparently they're not interested. I haven't seen any for sale sign go up. So we might want to watch building a PUD or something on it until they decide to sell it. If you're talking about some vacant property, you know, we probably need to investigate whether the owners really want to get rid of it.
Yeah, Miss Johnson Harris, kind of, you said it correctly. The addresses you supplied me, Kim, they were all privately owned.
Yeah.
So they do have, we would need to have homeowner permission before putting up something else there.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying putting something else there. What I'm suggesting is that we, you know, my mother was a real estate agent, and there were properties that were just sort of abandoned, and the family wasn't quite sure what to do with it. But when approached, they were willing to sell it, but they, you know, as a family, they just couldn't kind of get their heads around dealing with it, and it was easier just to pay the taxes than it was to do something with it.
Well, my suggestion in this situation is, I saw something that said we don't have really good community. People don't always are not friendly, and one of the things we need to watch out for is, I think most of the people that you were talking about are educated, well educated, and that property has been in their house, their family for years. So, you know, I think they see things going up around them, and when they're ready, they will do what they do. But I don't think we should be talking about advocating to approach them. And that's just my personal opinion, because I think that as long as they pay the taxes and they keep the property up, then we should be happy that they're there. They've been here a long time.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm gonna change course real quick. I want to start talking about putting together a project list based on the issues that were listed in this initial survey. So can you guys think of anything to address some of these concerns that were brought up by you guys and community members?
I don't. Go ahead, Kim.
I'm just looking at things that I wrote down because of the speeding was just simple things. I mean, I worked on speeding for Ridge Street for a couple of years, and you know, then of course the traffic director left, and no one was back taking his job. So I just kind of let it drop. But one of the things that I noticed in a lot of areas is that there really aren't any speed signs. So, you know, a little more reminder of what the speed is, because I know the traffic man said to me, well, everybody knows all neighborhoods are supposed to be 25 miles an hour. I said, well, that's an assumption that I don't think we know. And so, you know, because I see coming up off of 5th Street onto Ridge Street, I think there's a sign way down sort of in the trees that says 25. And then there's nothing else the entire time on Ridge Street until you turn down on Brookwood. There is one sign at the top of Brookwood says 25. Anyway, that's one thing that I said. The other is I've wondered, you know, because when I was knocking doors, everybody was like, oh, we need speed bumps. And, you know, and I heard, oh, you can't put speed bumps, but I know that it can happen because Market Street over in, oh, I can't remember the neighborhood now. Anyway, they put speed bumps up. And, you know, and I heard, well, you can't do that because the fire engines use those streets. And it's like, well, yep. The fire engines still use those streets. The other thing that they did on those streets was they put up 3-way stop signs just to slow the traffic down. So these are, you know, what I put and why I'm explaining it.
Okay, I'm writing down everything you're saying. The speed bumps, where would those go?
Well, I mean, where exactly? I mean, I would guess right before intersections. So as Langford comes up and Hartman's Mill Road comes up and Raymond Road comes up, Brookwood Road comes up, it would definitely slow the traffic down. But I know that the buses are going along there too. And so speed bumps, I'm not sure I think if you had 3-way stop signs though.
Aaron, if I can weigh in.
Yes, go ahead, Brennan.
My name's Brennan Duncan. I am the traffic engineer now. I took over after we had a hiatus of traffic men, as you put it. So I've been with the city in this capacity for about 3 years now. And just to address a couple of those, we can look at doing speed bumps or something like that. Aaron, I would recommend, I know we did this when Tierra had the CDBG for the 10th and Page neighborhood, is just getting some speed studies done first.
We had that done on Ridge Street.
Okay, and I can look back through, but it might be worth looking at it again. I can pull up those and see, you know, if Ridge Street is the problem, we can look at what those.
Now, this is Upper Ridge Street. This is I think it's also called Old Ridge. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So so that's where we had the traffic study done. And the other suggestion I had on 5th Street, because that's like a nightmare at this point, I think, you know.
Well, in Fifth Street, Fifth Street, I'm going to be going to council November 16th to talk to them about the fatalities and some of the recommendations that we have for 5th Street. So I think that one's a separate issue. I think we can take the majority of that stuff maybe off of the CDBG.
Good.
I think that's a big enough, I think those issues are going to cost too much to really be taken care of with the CDBG funds.
Kim brought up about putting signs up, and that's a wonderful idea. We have a couple of signs up and people just park there anyway. We need some enforcement. The traffic people need to come to our neighborhood. We have improper parking. We have driveways blocked. We have people parked by signs that say no parking.
I've got one right now in front of my house. I called on Monday to report that one.
Going down Brookwood Drive, there are like, Brookwood Drive. There are several signs that says no parking, and the street has become a lot, it has become very small because people are parking right by the sign.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a police car stop to enforce the improper parking or the speed or anything. They come through and they look at you and they wave and they go on their merry way. So some enforcement. And rather than having speed bumps, you might think about rumble strips. Because speed bumps, you're driving 50 miles in a 25 zone, which happens.
Yep.
You could actually hurt somebody with the speed bump. And I'm not talking about the people in the car. You could hurt an individual, but we need you all to come up in this area. The homes are nice and everything, but the parking is a monster. And I'm concerned about, there used to be a bench on the corner of Brookwood.
Ridge, yeah.
A lot of people who are handicapped and they staying out in the street waiting for the bus because there's nowhere to sit, nowhere to stand. And that's another issue, that speed could end up killing somebody.
Also, they put a bench down on Brookwood, and I'm not sure what that cutover street is.
That's Brookwood Lane, and the bus doesn't come there.
And the bus doesn't even go there.
Well, it used to,
But it doesn't now.
But wait a minute, the reason it was stopped was because this street is too narrow for a bus to be coming down. And so if we could pick that bench up and bring it up on the corner of where you are,
house.
That would be nice.
Okay.
So I guess I hear all the things you're saying, and I mean, rumble strips is something that we haven't really entertained in the city just for the residents' benefit, because the people who live in the houses directly adjacent to wherever that rumble strip is at, every time someone goes over it, they're just going to hear that noise.
Yeah, that's true.
We actually just on the other side of Fifth Street from you, in the Fry Spring neighborhood, a street that went through the traffic calming process and got the speed bumps put in, are now asking for them to be removed for a very similar reason. Just because traffic is coming up, they're slowing down, and then the noise of them speeding back up over and over again, and trucks bottoming out and everything else. So we can look at traffic calming options, but I just want to, I guess, say it with a grain of salt that, some of the options may be worse than the speeding or perceived speeding that we have. And that was the only reason I asked for us to do, that study again. I'll look up and see if I can find the ones that were done. We don't consider it a speeding problem until the majority of people are going more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. So that's.
I think you should look at that traffic study. I know it's not a majority, but it's certainly a sizable amount.
Okay. Yeah. And like I said, but when I say majority, we use the 85th percentile. So it's saying that if more than 15% of people are going over 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, then we have a speeding problem. So yeah. I will try and find that study again. But the other thing that you had mentioned with the stop signs, we cannot put in a three-way stop as traffic calming. It goes against all the engineering principles. There has to be an actual vehicular demand that requires the three-way or four-way stop. So we can't just throw stop signs up that are not warranted. Otherwise, if someone were to get into an accident there, they could sue the city and say, it's not warranted. The other thing it does is people, if they come up to that intersection and there's rarely vehicles there, they end up just going through the stop signs anyway. So,
they do that on the corner of Ridge and Brookwood all the time.
Yeah.
Can you talk to someone about enforcing?
We can, yeah, I mean, that's part of the police department, not necessarily traffic engineering department, but I can definitely put a bug in their ear and ask them to go out there and do that.
And could you also look at Brookwood Lane, because you can't see down Brookwood Drive when you're turning left off of Brookwood Lane.
So is the issue there, again, the parking, like
Yes.
people parking along it, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
cars parking. I talked to the traffic engineer back a long time ago about that intersection. So what they did is they put a no parking on the right-hand side approaching Brookwood, but on the left-hand side, they didn't put anything. So you can see going to the right, but when you go to the left to go down the hill, you just, as I come out, I pray. I hope
I'm just looking at the Google Street View. To the left, you have a fire hydrant immediately there, and then another driveway.
no,
So
no.
you've got about 50 or 60 feet before anyone could even try and park legally.
I think we're talking about two different streets.
Yeah, you're talking
You
about
said
Bridge and
Brookwood Lane where it meets Brookwood Drive?
We're coming off, yeah, we're coming off of Raymond, and we take a right onto Brookwood Lane. And as you
Yep.
approach the top of this street, there's no fire hydrant on that street,
There's a fire hydrant just to the left.
but I haven't seen it.
Oh.
Maybe all the cars are there. I'm gonna walk out there as soon as I finish. I have not seen a fire hydrant.
Yeah, it's just around the corner, but you
Around
can't
the
park
corner,
within 15
around-
feet.
Well, they park there, around
Okay.
okay, I'm talking about Brookwood Lane. There are cars parked on both sides,
On Brookwood Lane.
on Brookwood Lane, as you
Okay.
approach Brookwood Drive. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the fire hydrant on
On
Brookwood.
Brookwood Drive.
Yeah, no, not on Brookwood Lane.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can
They're parking
look at,
close to that fire hydrant on Brookwood Drive too.
we can look at putting, again, it's per our city code, there's no parking within 20 feet of an intersection. So if people are doing that there, we can install a sign,
okay.
that's a little bit further back. So you at least have visibility when you get to the intersection.
Yeah, I think the lack of visibility is due to cars parking almost right up to that corner.
Okay.
So Aaron, getting back to your task. I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
I don't know where we are, the city, meaning the city, where the city is with the Elliott Streetscape Plan that was developed in 2013. There was also a 1998 Ridge Street study. Don't know where the city is with the recommendations from that. And then there's also the old SIA plan. And how many of the recommendations from those three plans is the city going to undertake that would address some of the major concerns and issues that we've raised in the neighborhood? So we're not duplicating what other funding sources there might be. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. Brendan, do you
The-
want to take this one?
Yeah, the Elliott Streetscape, we're waiting on final amount of funding from city council for that, but that is still trying to move forward. I know that that's adding a crosswalk where First Street comes out. I think that was one of the things that I had seen on
Yes.
the wish list. So, that would be done as part of that project. The city has Smart Scale project that is funded right now for the intersection of Cherry and Fifth. I don't know about the SIA or if there's any, I think I just forgot her name. Brenda Kelly. I think she's been kind of heading up the stuff for the SIA. So I don't know if there's anything more with that.
Oh, and there's also the Pollux branch improvement that there was a group, I want to say maybe 2 to 3 years ago, and all kinds of wonderful things were going to be happening at Pollux branch.
Yeah, they did a watershed study thing for that.
Yep.
And again, I think that's one of those that just needs funding for some of those. So that may be worth pulling out and looking at, if there are items in that study that you all would like done. maybe that could be something that CDBG could fund.
I would also want us to keep in mind that South First Street is going to be going under redevelopment.
Yep.
And they are also supposed to be preserving Pollock's Branch back there, and I believe creating like some type of trail or connection. So and I'm sorry, I don't know all of the details, but it would definitely be pertinent to look at what they have going on, so that once again, we're not duplicating efforts and funds, and we're collaborating.
Yeah, I believe that their project just creates a connection kind of along the back edge of their property line and ties in both at like Hartman's Mill, Rougemont area, and then, you know, carries it all the way up to Elliott or close to Elliott.
I was on some group that we walked that whole thing, and I seem to remember a bridge, talk of a bridge being built.
Yeah, and I think that was
lot-
part of the that was part of the SIA that Brenda Kelly is working on. So that would connect over to the trail that the South First Street redevelopment is working on.
Boy, so it seems like maybe we need to figure out where those programs or improvements or whatever are going, as you said, and I said earlier, so things aren't duplicated.
I can get you guys an update on those plans and send you an email before our next meeting. I do want to give the public a chance to talk real quick before we